This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. I'm Fred Wallace along with Denise Reid. We've got an interesting show today. Our host charity is the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce, and we'll be hearing from Stacey Berry as the day unfolds, and also Erroll Trelsan from the Alliance Lawyers will be joining us, and we'll be talking about a variety of aspects, including wills, trustees, and guardians, all the legalities that Erroll is well equipped to talk about. Also coming up in our program today, we will have a featured video, and that's from Centre Grey Health Services, the foundation, which essentially is the Markdale Hospital. So that's all ahead. I'm Fred Wallace, and our co-host is Denise Reid. Denise, before we start today, why don't we talk about the concept and the mission of living well and giving well and what we're about?
Well, we started a few months ago now, and the idea came together with Willard Vanderploeg from the Hospital Foundation, Bright Shores now, and Stuart Reid from the Community Foundation. And their idea was to, how do we get to people? How do we, through Rogers, to get them to living well, giving well? Mm-hmm. And how does that concept go in the community, and try and get our viewers to understand more ideas of how you can live well and how you can give in your community.
And to that extent, we're talking a lot in these programs about legacy gifts and having a will and leaving a portion for something that's special to you.
Well, and that's a lot of people, as we've had in previous episodes. Have you done a will? No. Are you afraid to do that? Yes. Are you afraid to have that conversation with your family? Yes. And so hoping that Erroll will be able to give us a little ideas on not feeling as uncomfortable with that situation.
The will process.
Exactly.
And our other guest today, we want to welcome Stacey Berry. Stacey is the Fund Development Manager for the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce. I'm going to say somewhat of a reluctant guest, but look at you, look at you right here on the table. And the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce is our host charity today, so thank you very much for that. And I think we should state right off the bat what your position is with the Women's Centre, Stacey.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me here, first of all. And so I'm the Fund Development Manager with the Women's Centre Grey Bruce. And I can go in and tell you a little bit about the Women's Centre if you'd like me to start there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
About the services that you offer and the programs that are available.
Absolutely. So we have 3 core programs. So we have the VAW Emergency Shelter Program, the Second Stage Residential Program, and the Anti-Human Trafficking Youth Program. And through that, we're helping all of the community of Grey and Bruce. And with the emergency shelter, we help 160 women and children and youth staying in our property there for our services.
When you first came into the studio, my first question to you was the need for the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce and the demand for the primary services. Can you give us an example of the numbers that we're talking about, Stacey?
Mm-hmm. So our shelter is always full. It is hard to get a bed in there. And we have a crisis hotline that can be accessed 24/7. And the numbers for last year, for example, were over 1,500 calls we were able to help within the community.
I can't speak for myself, but I think your face says this.
Yeah, that's shocking to me. I guess I'm very fortunate. I've not had to use the services. You hear about it in the community, and I'm glad to hear that there's a hotline 24/7. Mm-hmm. That, because how do you, when somebody is in crisis, as a mom with young children, not knowing where to go, what can they do? There's the 24/7 hotline that's available. That's right, and our counselors are always there to help.
I talked when we were talking before we came on the program about the region that you serve. Is it simply Owen Sound Central, or where does the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce serve?
So our programs are located in Owen Sound, but we serve all of the Grey and Bruce area.
Wow. What about connecting with you? And again, I think it's important to stress that rather than providing the services, you're looking at funding the services.
Yes, definitely. So we are very lucky to have funding and grants, but we also, of course, need to do fundraising to help
raise funds for our programs. So it's wonderful to be here today, and thank you for having us.
Sorry. I was just going to say the process of that funding through governments is always pretty extensive.
It is, yes. A lot of grant writing there and funding for sure.
Right. And so I'm going back a few years and just a little personal. The Women's Centre did a calendar. This is probably way before your time. This is quite a while ago because I was Miss February, and it was women,
really?
Yes,
I didn't know
women
that.
in business, and that was a fundraiser. And I thought that was one of the ways that you can, raise money, but the funding, mainly those that you're going to the government for and trying to get. But we are a giving community.
That's right.
And there's a lot of people that are very, willing to give.
Yeah, and not only the events that we ourselves are putting on, but we have many third-party events in our community that are helping to raise funds for the Women's Centre for our programs.
Do you have an example of some of those programs or initiatives or campaigns that you'll be running to generate funds?
Third-party events, are you talking about? So this year we had our first annual charity golf event. That was fantastic. We will be doing it again next year. We had a social event this year, which was a tea party. And again, right now we're developing our corporate partnership plan with our 2025 events to make sure that all of our partners are aware of what's going on, and also they have the ability to come in and support us through partnership and also with silent auction items and whatnot to help raise funds for our programs.
I guess, so I'm now saying, where's the connection here? And then I think it's an unfortunate way that you have to connect probably with Erroll, as in, and we talk about Erroll, you, if I understand, you're civil litigation.
Yes.
And administrative law.
That's
Is
right.
that correct?
Well,
Give us a little background.
I'm a small town lawyer. So we, my wife and I we arrived in Owen Sound 25 years ago. So I basically practice all kinds of litigation.
Okay.
I guess as I get older, I do more estate administration, which is today's topic primarily. And but as a small town lawyer, I provide advice to a wide variety, a lot of institutional clients, including the Women's Centre.
Right. Yeah, and that's, geographically, I guess we are an older center,
Yep.
as far as wills are concerned. But when we talk about the Women's Crisis Center, then we have a need for protection for women and for their children. And when people are talking about, and I was looking, a guardian in their will, that's crucial when you're talking about how to protect, if you pass away, how you protect your children or how they're taken care of. And I wondered how is that? Do people pick that themselves? Do they pick their guardians?
Well, it's called an estate trustee, which is what in normal parlance would be your executor, or the woman is called the executrix.
Okay.
But it's now called an estate trustee.
Okay.
And absolutely, that's the first question a lawyer will ask you when you're going to do your will. And I guess I should start by saying that no one wants to do a will because no one wants to think about dying.
Right.
And people have the wrong thought process, because you don't do a will because you know you're going to eventually die. You do a will because any of us could have a stroke tonight, and it's a different way of thinking. But yeah, Denise, that's the first thing you need to decide is who is going to administer my estate? Who will I designate as my estate trustee? And that can be family members. Often it's a family member. It can be a lawyer, it can be an accountant, it can be a good friend, or you can hire a trust company to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was one of my questions. When I'm looking, okay, trustee, guardian, executor, I wondered whether executor was kind of the old terminology.
Yeah.
And you've kind of already answered that.
Yeah, it's your estate trustee.
Estate trustee.
Yeah.
What's the best way to go to choose your executor? You mentioned a lawyer, and that's what I've done. And no offense, I went with Grant Wade from Middleborough and Stevens. If I had known Erroll, I would have come to you. But Grant looked after me, and I thought I would go with a lawyer as opposed to a friend or a family member.
It's a very personal decision, Fred. I guess the first thing everyone needs to remember is it's not an honor; it's a job. Right? So, often people will have, a common situation will be they'll have 3 kids. And then the question arises, should we appoint them all? And I usually say, you don't need 3.
No.
You might want to appoint a team of 2. But it's a very personal decision. Some people, of course, it's most common, husbands and wives will name their spouse or their children. So that's a really tough question because it all depends. But the one thing that people need to remember is not only should you have a will, but we live in an iPhone generation now. We can put in our reminders. Every 3 to 5 years you should review it. Doesn't mean you need to change it, but you know, the old school was if you wanted to make a little tweak to your will, the lawyer would do a codicil. Well, that's a thing of the past now. We don't do codicils. You just, if you want to make a change to your will, you go to the computer, change it, refresh it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from a very personal standpoint, Erroll, did I make a good choice in choosing a lawyer to be my executor?
There's nothing wrong with choosing a lawyer. It all depends on the situation. You leave your beneficiaries out of it, so it's probably a decent choice. You picked a good firm, and lawyers and accountants are quite common, but any professional person could do it. You don't need any special degree of expertise because they're going to hire a lawyer and they're going to hire an accountant anyways.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, we have our wills with another, the Middleborough and Stevens. There you go. But we've learnt in our episodes here that people who are afraid to do a will, but in actuality, we're doing our family a favor.
Oh yeah.
By having a will.
Yeah. The problem, there are many problems with not having a will, but the biggest problem is no one has been appointed to deal with your estate. So someone needs to come forward. But depending on who the person is, bonding may be required. So the other thing people need to realize is when you have a will, normally, depending on your assets, you may have to have your estate trustee formally appointed by the court. That's called probate.
Okay. And does that procedure, that takes longer?
Well, right now it's taking, we have a real problem in Ontario right now because it's taking a ridiculous amount of time to have an estate trustee appointed. It can be 6 to 9 months between the time you file an application and the time the court issues it, and it's just due to lack of resources. And it's a real problem that we need the government to address right now because if you wanted to probate a $2 million estate, you're paying the government an estate administration tax of perhaps as much as $40,000. So you'd think you'd get some service, but for whatever reason, they're not allocating the resources to and it's becoming a critical problem right now.
We're going to talk a little bit about probate as we continue on Living Well, Giving Well. This is Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Grey County Television. Fred Wallace and Denise Reid. Our guest today, Stacey Berry, Fund Development Manager for the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce, who is our host charity today, and Erroll Trelsan from the Alliance Lawyers is with us as well. So please stay with us. We're going to have a short video about one of our partners, and that will be Centre Grey Health Services, the foundation, or Markdale Hospital Foundation. That's coming up, and then we'll be back with more with Stacey and with Erroll when we continue on Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm Harvey Fraser. I'm chair of the Centre Grey Health Services Foundation. We have a brand new hospital in Markdale, but the government only funded 90% of the bricks and mortar. The remaining, all the equipment, right down to the chair you sit in, is funded locally by local donors from our community. State-of-the-art equipment is very important, especially this day and age, because healthcare is changing so rapidly. Equipment that you bought 10 years ago is already antiquated, not up to date. So you're constantly in a process of replacing equipment because of the state of the art. And that state of the art is a good thing because that saves lives. And that's why we're all here, is to do what we're doing, is to provide funding for this state of art of equipment. If you don't have that equipment, you have a difficult time getting doctors to come to your area and possibly even retaining them if you don't keep ahead of the curve of state of the art equipment. We need your support. It's important that we continue to raise dollars. So our donors are very, very important to us. Individuals, businesses, that they continue to support us because, like I said, you never stop raising money for healthcare. if we didn't have donors, none of this would be possible. So I thank all our donors. Every time you ask for something, they always step up and make the job that much easier.
Back to Rogers TV, Grey County. This is Living Well, Giving Well. I'm Fred Wallace along with Denise Reid. We just saw a video for Centre Grey Hospital Services, the foundation in Markdale. Just want to take a second and tip my hat to Darlene Lamberti. She is the executive director of the foundation, and I was there in September for their Grand Fondo, and they had this big bicycle event. You could go 26 kilometers, 77 kilometers, or 130 kilometers, I think, and their goal was to raise $75,000 for needed imaging equipment in the hospital, and they blew by it. So that was terrific. And Darlene would certainly want me to remind you that there is another Grand Fondo coming up in September of 2025. You can circle it on your calendar, and that is September the 6th. And one other note, they're always looking for volunteers, and as we've been talking about, a legacy gift for Centre Grey Hospital or Health Services Foundation would be greatly appreciated if you leave a legacy. Our guests today on Living Well, Giving Well are Stacey Barry from the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce, along with Erroll Trelsan from the Alliance Lawyers. Thanks for staying with us to talk about your services. We certainly appreciate it.
I kind of want to go back to the Guardian. And I think that kind of, because I think that's a common connector with that. And when a Guardian is set up, how long does that, like, if the kids have a Guardian and it's in a will, is there an age that it ends? How long are the kids taken care of? Or,
well,
I mean...
First of all, in your will, if you have young children, it's not uncommon to have a provision where you appoint someone to look after your children. But we need to realize kids aren't property, so that's not necessarily binding on a court. So if something were to happen to you before your children reach the age of majority, it would be up to the court to decide if the person that you appointed is an appropriate person. So anyways, we did talk about appointing estate trustees, which is important, but that's just the first step.
Right.
The next thing you need to do, the job of an estate trustee is to collect your assets and then follow the wishes in your will. You don't own anything once you die. Mm-hmm. You give it all to your trustee, and then you tell them what to do with it. So what people need to decide, and obviously you need to decide if you can afford to give to charity, and if you want to give to charity or make any specific bequest, then that's the first part of your will. And then the next part is the residue, which is everything that's left over. That's typical. And then how do you want to leave the residue? Normally it's to your children, if you have children, or friends, or you can do it in certain shares. And then you need to decide, does someone have to be alive to get my gift? Or if I leave something to Denise and Denise predeceases me, does it go to her kids?
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, and again, things change, but you want to have those, you want to have all of those intentions the way you want them if they're needed immediately.
Well, and it's good then for me to talk to my estate trustee, whoever I decide. I've actually on my computer have at home a list of where all my bank accounts are, where all my investments are, where my credit cards, you know, who I normally donate to, all of that. So I will have that conversation. Well, my husband knows that at this point, you know, but that's important for those communication and talks to go on.
You'd be amazed at how many people don't do that. And I always say to my clients,
Really?
There are unclaimed bank accounts. You can go on the internet and you can find unclaimed bank accounts. There's no registry of unclaimed life insurance policies, right? So that's probably, that's huge. Now, a life insurance policy or any investment where you can designate a beneficiary doesn't form part of your estate unless you designate the estate as the beneficiary.
Okay.
But it's really important for your loved ones and certainly your estate trustee to know, are there life insurance policies? And what investments do I have with which institutions? And have I correctly designated the beneficiaries. So there's a list, whichever lawyer you go to, and you don't need a lawyer to do a will, but it's highly recommended.
Right.
People can go on the internet, and I guess if will kits on the internet are better than nothing. But a law firm provides a lot more than just the drafting service. It's the advice that goes into it, and then providing a depository for your original will.
Yeah. The advantage, Erroll, to having a lawyer as opposed to an internet kit, and I'll use a personal example where I've been left as an executor for a friend. That's great, but I don't know what bank I'm going to be dealing with. I don't know what account number is. So I guess there's a lot of steps to be followed here other than just hitting send.
Absolutely, and everybody's situation is specific, but everybody should at least sit down with a lawyer and get some advice, because you don't want to leave grief for your loved ones. You don't want to be left in a situation where, particularly for people that don't, we didn't talk about what happens if you don't have a will. Well, if you don't
Next
have...
episode.
So if you don't have a will, it's called the Succession Law Reform Act. It tells what happens on an intestacy. Intestacy is a fancy legal word for what happens when, if I don't have a will, I'm intestate. And the way it works is that if you are married and have children, then your spouse gets a preferential share, and there's a division between your wife and your children. If you're not married and you have children, then it will go to your children. If you're not married and you don't have children, then it depends on, are your parents alive? It goes up. If your parents are deceased and you have siblings, it will go to your siblings. And if your parents are deceased and you don't have siblings, it'll go to the government.
Well, and this is, in my mind, that's why you need a lawyer to help with all of that. And also, in my mind, it's the peace of mind. I'm going to know that I've looked after everything for my kids. So if it comes such time when I've passed away, they're going to be hopefully grieving, and I'm hoping, hopefully, but that they don't have to worry about it. But also, too, there is a worry that what's the government going to get if I don't do? Because let's face it, we probably, in most cases, if you talk to people, we pay the government enough in our living years so that if we can organize and do things, and we'll be getting into that as we go along too, to make sure that the government isn't getting that extra that could be given to beneficiaries.
If it can,
or a
other
charity,
people
or
can benefit from it.
Exactly.
Yeah. In Canada and Ontario, at least right now, there are no taxes imposed on your assets at death other than the realization of capital gains. But that may change in the future. It's an easy touch. But right now, the only essential tax that's imposed is what I referred to earlier as the estate administration tax, which is payable on the value of your assets. That's when a will is being admitted to probate. Sometimes wills don't need to be admitted to probate. If you own everything jointly with your spouse, your will won't even need to be admitted to probate. And if you have a corporation, you can have a corporate will, and currently the rules allow the assets under your corporate will don't have to be admitted to probate either.
So there we go. We're going to talk a little bit about probate in an upcoming episode of Living Well, Giving Well. Finally, Erroll, I want to go back to the executor or the role of the person, the estate trustee. What are the criterias that Denise should have looked for, that I should have looked for, that our audience should have looked for in that person, or people that are going to look after us and do our bidding or what we would like to have done?
Well, other than trustworthiness, one of the most essential criteria is their age. Okay?
Right.
So if you can avoid appointing someone who's older than you, you should. And if you have someone 10 or 20 years younger who you think would fill that role, I think that's decent. None of us are planning to check out immediately, and we could check out immediately, but the odds are, you look at the actuarial tables, someone will sell you a life insurance policy. They're gonna bet that you're gonna live for at least the next year. So things change, but it's essentially who can deal with the job. And the job is everything from dealing with your funeral arrangements, if you haven't prepaid or prearranged those, to taking care of my taxes, to directing the lawyers, to going to the banks. It's a big job. I'm stressing the fact it's a big job. Mm-hmm. It's not an honor, it's a job.
I don't know where I was, but it was a group setting and it was a lawyer talking. and he said, how many people in this room have been an executor? And hands went up.
Yep.
And the second question was, how many would do it again? So it is a challenge, right?
Yep.
I've never looked at it that way. I've always looked at it like, okay, who do I trust?
Yeah.
Who do I think is going to be able to look after, you know, things when I'm gone? But it is a job. And I never thought of it like that.
And there's a
before.
checklist, and the professional advisors will provide the person with checklists, so it's not like they have to be highly educated. Stupidity is not going to help them, but my point is you don't need a high degree of formal education to do it. Some of the best estate trustees have had very little, that I've dealt with, have had very little formal education, but they need common sense.
Right.
And can they deal with all the different things that are going to arise, including perhaps bickering among beneficiaries? Because one of the jobs of an estate trustee is, do I make an interim distribution, and if so, how much? You want.
Fascinating conversation about wills, and we'll talk a little bit more on an upcoming episode of Living Well, Giving Well. Stacey, we want to thank you for sitting in today, reluctant as you may have been for this for this episode. What should people know about the Women's Centre in terms of supporting? Yes,
just to circle back, I want to stress again how important it is to keep those wills up to date. Life changes, things can change, and you know, for example, the Women's Centre is here for situations where women do need help, where they need to flee those situations. And when they come to us, we are always in need of pillows, blankets, pajamas, personal care items, anything to get them settled, make them feel comfortable and welcome into our doors when they've made that brave decision to leave.
Cash works too?
Cash works great.
Okay, is cash king? And I know some people have said that. Different organizations.
Cash is king for sure. You know, it does. There are great costs for our programs and services to keep running, so that these services are available for the women, children, and youth. But gift cards are also wonderful. If women, children, and youth are out wanting to do their own grocery shopping, wanting to be independent, doesn't always have to be cash, right? It can be donations in kind that are still going towards everyone who needs it.
And before we let you go, your webpage and phone number when people want to support the Women's Centre of Grey Bruce.
thewomenscentre.org, and our crisis line for anyone in immediate need is 519-371-1600.
Now be honest, how much fun was this?
This was fun. This was fun. You all made it very easy. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stacey, and thank you, Erroll. And Denise and I will be back with another edition of Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. Erroll will be joining us, and we'll be talking about, for the unfortunate incident of what to do in terms of separation and divorce. So please join us again and again. Remember to leave a legacy gift in your will. It'll be greatly appreciated. You're watching Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers TV, Grey County.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Hi, I'm Connor Smith of the Onside Attack. Get the inside information on us by watching Attack Wrap on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV, Georgian Bay, Channel 53.